in the arms of the families. Thank you.
Thank you, Elon. Again, we just don't have the ability to know exactly how you feel, but thank you for helping to give us a glimpse of what life has been like. It helps us all to better understand and to be able to place ourselves in these situations that nobody ever wants to be in. So thank you for sharing with us, for sharing with the world. We're going to alternate from left to right to ask a few questions, learn a little bit more. I'm going to begin with my colleague, Representative Kim. We'll start with you. We'll start with Representative Kim. I didn't mean to hit you while you were standing up. My apologies. And then we'll alternate back to this side.
I welcome you and thank you so much for sharing your stories. And I've taken notes, but we have already known about your family members and your loved ones. And so I just want to echo the commitments that our Chairman Mast and our ranking member and the colleagues here today are making, and that we will not rest until all hostages remains, or we don't, as you mentioned, Irma, we want to see your boyfriend come live, not in a bag. And I really took that to heart, and I'm so sorry for the personal suffering that you endured and continue to do. So I really feel for you, from a woman to another woman, but also to your grandfather, to your brother-in-law, to your family members, to your brother and your son. I really feel for you. It's also good to hear that you have confidence in President Trump and in his leadership. You already said, LA, that his leadership has already made a difference. And we're doing this in different phases, but we will make sure that everyone is back home with their loved ones. And we will not rest, and we'll provide the forum and the opportunity for you to speak out until everyone is back home. So I just wanted to also echo that Hamas's repeated attempts to exploit the recent hostage transfers is a good reminder of the need to work hand in glove to ensure an attack like this can never happen again. So I hope you will continue to speak out and tell us what steps are needed in your view to ensure that we can achieve Hamas enduring the defeat. If you want to respond to that, I would be grateful.
Thank you again. I think there are multiple areas that Congress can help. Probably the most important is to support President Trump administration in their efforts to bring our loved ones back home. We know how much they care. We know how much the people travel all over and do whatever they can, and they need all the support from Congress. So that's a first. The second, from our perspective, there are some economical sanctions that should be put on any charity organization that support Hamas to this day, and we gotta block them. And we gotta make sure that Hamas is not getting any financial aid. And that's something that obviously is done through different countries. We keep on hearing that there's still ways that they're getting their funds. And both Hamas and Iran, their biggest supporter, should be blocked. And then from our perspective, we also feel that the Arab countries need to take action against Hamas and say loud and clear that even according to Islam holding hostages remains is against any religious values, and they should call on Hamas on that. And Hamas should release immediately the remains of hostages taken and not use them as bargaining chips. That's against any religious value and any humanitarian law. So thank you. Thank you for taking this into consideration.
Moshe?
If I may add, and thank you for asking this. So as we mentioned, 21 hostages returned. There are still 76 who are held captive. And in this moment in time, the most important thing is, from elected officials, is to emphasize to whoever they speak, whether to other elected officials, whether to the administration or to the wider public, that the first mission we have in this war, and the most urgent one, is the release of the hostages. Anybody who studied history and war studies and served in the military know that there are urgent missions, short-term missions, and there are medium and long-term missions. Our medium and long-term mission is to ensure Hamas is dismantled alongside its accomplices, such as the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, ensure Gaza is a different place to the one it was on October the 6th, ruled by Hamas as a ruthless Islamist authoritarian quasi-state. But in the short term, the only thing we can do right now as a key to stabilize the region is to ensure all the hostages will return, those who are alive through rehabilitation and those who were murdered to be buried in the land of Israel. I was asked yesterday by an elected official who met the King of Jordan what I want him to ask the King. And like Ronen said, what we ask the international community and the Arab countries is that they'll learn not just to say no to proposals, but to say what they can do. What is their proposal on the table? And I saw President Trump yesterday meeting the King of Jordan and emphasizing to him, you need to bring us a plan. If you don't, we're not coming on board to our plan. And it seems that he heard that message. I implore you to make sure we pressure international stakeholders. I felt that in the past, including the previous administration, those regimes were not held accountable and were not pushed to the corner in order to provide us victims of Hamas atrocities. And those are Israelis and Palestinians. Palestinians are also victims of Hamas, to give answers. Let's make sure that the hostages remain on top of mind and that we can see an end to this ongoing tragedy and a vision for a better Middle East in the long term.
Thank you. Representative Keating.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being here. For some of you, it's 3 times I've met you and talked with you. Iana, thank you for telling us and the courage you had telling us what it was actually like in captivity. It's hard to say this about someone who's like Matan, who's held hostage, going through brutality. It's hard to say he's blessed, but he is blessed that he has you and your love and courage, and he's not alone. And I think he knows that. I always have felt awkward when we talk about this issue and use the term the hostages. And thank you all for being here, because the reason that is so inadequate is because these are people. They have names. They have Omar, Matan. They have Ariya, Amri, Gal, Etar. They have names. And they have relationships, son, boyfriend, grandfather, brother, sister, mother, father. And thank you for every time you come, every time you speak up. That transcends. And it's important, because this isn't just an issue or a policy. These are human beings. And you reinforce that, and it's essential. We also have our values together being held hostage. The values of Israel, the values of the US, of all our allies. And we have to always be mindful we are all being held hostage in that respect. Those of us that respect justice and decency, humanity, and we have to remain close so that we can be stronger against the opposite. We have an agreement now. Sides have come together for an agreement. Imperfect as it may be, it's an agreement. And so let me just tell you at this moment, because we deal in the moment, and you've all dealt in the moment, in the roller coaster that you've been through. In this moment, I think it's important to have a mindset, all of us, of not how this deal can't be held, but how it can be held. Let's get through this moment. Let's both sides work together to just get this imperfect deal through so the hostages, so the individuals will be released and brought home to their loved ones. And until we do that, we can't rest. So that is the mindset, I think, of all of us here. It was a difficult agreement. Democrats and Republicans all working together on both sides because it's not a partisan issue. It's a human issue. And your presence here is so important to reinforce it. And I just want to thank you for continuing doing something that you didn't sign up for, something that was thrust upon you inhumanly, and something that I trust we can bring to an end, at least in this moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Keating. Representative King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here and sharing your stories and your loved ones' stories. It's extraordinarily important, not only on October 7th, but in the 495 days since, that you share those stories on every platform that is available so we can continue to show the atrocities that Hamas continues to commit, the fact that Iran is supporting Hamas each and every day and is the head of the snake. We need to hold the terrorists accountable who masterminded the October 7th attacks. And can you please talk to us about how we ensure that the global organizations that over the course of the last 495 days have not raised their voices, have not held Hamas or Iran accountable. What can we as members of Congress or people who care about your families and your loved ones do to ensure that we have the safe and immediate return and a global effort to make sure that hostages are not taken in the future?
I think what you raised is very important. I think the first step of doing that is, putting all those organizations aside and focusing on the mission of bringing the hostages back home. After the hostages will be home, it will be much easier to eradicate Hamas. And as you all know, it's much easier to dry out a place or fight in a war while you don't have hostages there. I think the US government is doing great work in putting the hostages situation on the top priority. I'm sure as well that we saw this week Khalil al-Hayya meeting with the Hamas terrorists in Iran. So for sure that wasn't a help. You should just emphasize the Iran accountability for that. Make more pressure in Qatar that if they are not making a deal, they've been arrested, you dry out their money make sure that into Gaza is not going inside humanitarian aid, which has a long expiry date, because then Hamas cannot gain power. And after that, make sure $1 is not going inside from any organization. No banks are going to be rebuilt in Gaza, and no other way to bring money in. The rest of the organizations, I know you can do all the necessary work to make sure that they will do the right thing the next time. That is the ways I think and I see those things happens. But for the moment, the way to bring the hostages back home is in a deal that you must understand that in day 42, either all of them come back home or you start a deal of a hostage per day, but you need something that will not stop. This deal is problematic because every week to see few hostages is not easy. Must make sure this phase ends, and as soon as possible, we squeeze all the other phases to bring everybody home, and then you can start eradicating Hamas and continue to any plan and future plan containing Arab countries or by the lead of the US alone.
We need to bring the hostages home. I absolutely agree with you.
May I add? Let us first make sure all the hostages return, and then we will pursue every avenue of justice to hold account the WHO for allowing hospitals to be used as military infrastructure for holding hostages, to hold accountable UNRWA for allowing its employees and its infrastructure to be used by Hamas terrorists, and to hold accountable every organization in the world through sanctions for allowing this to go on for so many days. They are part of the problem, but now President Trump and his great team are trying to find a solution for the short-term problems. And I'm sure you'll be doing everything as Congress to hold accountable those who are supporting Hamas directly or indirectly.
Yes, we will. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Ms. Gillen.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Congressman Meeks, Ranking Member Meeks, for including me here today. And thank you to all of you for coming and sharing your stories with us. This is not an international conflict. This is about, as Moshe said, beautiful souls. I am one of the new members of the House of Representatives, and I want you to know that one of my first speeches, if not my first speech on the floor of the House, was honoring the hostages that had just been released as part of the deal, but reminding my colleagues and anyone who is watching that there still are so many more people that we need to bring home. I represent Long Island, home of Omer, and although I did not get to know you during the campaign, Mr. and Mrs. Neutra, I was there for your memorial service for Omer. And I'm so sorry that I did not get to know your son because he is a beautiful person. And I'm sorry for his brother because I hear the love of the brothers here about their missing brothers. And I'm so sorry for your family's loss. And I just wanted to be here to let you know that I will not rest and I will work with my colleagues day in and day out to get your loved ones back to you. Thank you for being here.
Representative Lawler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to each and every one of you for being here, for sharing your story, your experience, and that of your family. For 495 days, this travesty, this miscarriage of justice, this crime against humanity has endured. And each of you, in your own way, have had to live through hell. I, over these 495 days, have come to know many of you, some more acutely than others. I have spent a lot of time with the Neutras. This photo of your son This photo is seared in my mind. You see in your son someone who lit up the world. Someone who was selfless and caring. Someone with purpose. Having met your son Daniel, I know the impact this has had on him as well. I spoke to both of you the day that you found out that your son had in fact passed away on October 7th. For 430 some odd days, I watched the two of you traverse the world, meet with every leader around the globe, speak before tens of thousands of people, all with the hope that your son would come home. I don't know how the two of you, or any of you, have put one foot in front of the other for 495 days. I think the travesty in all of this is that there should not be a single hostage remaining at this point. Whether living or deceased, everyone should have been returned home by now. And so what each of you are doing by continuing to put a face on this, by continuing to make this the priority, it is essential. Because there really can be no peace unless every single hostage is released. And that's before we even get to addressing what to do with Hamas. Orna, if you would like, if not, I understand, but I think it's important for people to understand the full range of emotions that you both have had to endure over these 495 days, in which you had so much hope that you would be able to bring your son home alive, only to find out that, in fact, he was killed on October 7th. And now, in this fight to bring him home, what is that mix of emotion like, and how have you been able to proceed forward?
I first want to thank all the members of this committee, and I want to say that we are Israeli Americans, and we have been thankful for being just that, Israeli Americans over the past 16 months, proud Americans, because America has stood by our side, and people like you have been on our side and have been vocal. And what we know is that silence is complicity, and I can say that America has not been silent from the first moment. We have been in this terrorist attack since October 7th. It has not ended. And all the emotion and the range of emotion that Ilana described being exposed to in the 50 days, all the families, the hostages, of course, are bearing that, but the families on a different level are bearing that every day. This insane roller coaster emotions, every statement that is made by a world leader, and the implications of that. What does that mean for the hostages? The hope on the one hand, and the despair when things aren't going according to plan, and the worry. And I know, for a fact that these past few weeks have been extremely excruciating as families are waiting to hear whether their loved ones are in fact coming back. And for us, of course, knowing that Omer will not come back. Not come back in the way that we were expecting him to come back and wanting him to come back. It's been devastating. But we continue what we're doing because there's no way for the families to move forward before they're all back. And this is not just in speaking, it's true. Lives are stuck. And the whole region is stuck, and the state of Israel and the people are bleeding and are hurting and cannot move on. So as been stated here, before anything else, we need to bring them back. And I also want to say, to respond to the question about the different organizations, and this is the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and I think going back to what I said before, America has not been silent, but many organizations and other world leaders and countries have been silent or has not spoken strongly enough against what is going on. And I know that last year we spoke about this in the White House with the National Security Advisor. Said it does not make sense that only America is making so much noise. And a coalition was created for other world leaders to express condemnation for Hamas or to speak about the hostages coming home, but it's not enough. We don't hear those voices enough. I know a lot has been said about the American Red Cross or the Worldwide Red Cross. They have not seen any of the hostages. They present themselves as helpless in this situation where it's not up to them, but they also have a role in speaking up and saying that Hamas is not allowing them to see the hostages. Because the way this whole thing has been portrayed over the course of the past year is just insane. So we still have a lot of work to do. And there will be a lot of work to do in making sure that this doesn't happen again. But bringing back to the focus, we need to first bring them back.
I just want to add a quick reminder on the record. 45 Americans were murdered on October 7. 45 Americans. Where is the outrage? This is a big terrorist attack on Americans as well, not just on Israel. And we got to support these families. And I know, Representative Lawler, what you've done in that direction. We appreciate that, and it has to come to its final. And thank you, Brett, for everything you've been doing.
All right.
And still, again, 6 Americans there among the 76.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Snyder. Thank you. In many ways, you leave us speechless. And you can see all of us struggling to find the words, which is why I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for your courage to share your stories. I can't imagine the strength that it takes to be here and speak as you have, but to speak as you have been doing so for 495 days. You have carried the light of all the hostages, of your loved ones, but of the entire country of Israel. And it's a light for the world to see the truth. The truth is that Hamas invaded Israel on October 7th of 23 with genocidal intent. That Hamas took 250 people as hostage and continues to hold more than 70, 495 days later. That Hamas has time and again demonstrated, even in the obscene staging of the release the past couple of weeks of the hostages that their intent remains the same: the destruction of Israel, the murder of Jews, the torture of those they still hold. It is clear, and you help us see that as long as Hamas controls Gaza, as long as Hamas can threaten Israel and Israelis, neither Palestinians nor Israelis can have peace. As you have talked about, Hamas must be destroyed. Its capacity to reign terror over Gaza and to threaten Israel must be eliminated before we can move towards that peace we all want. You have our promise. You've heard us say this. We are not going to rest until every one of your loved ones, until every hostage is home and united with their family. As President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu have emphasized, every hostage should come home immediately and without any conditions. That's where we should be. It's not where we are. And we need to, as we've discussed today, work to increase pressure on the international community, to bring pressure not just on Hamas, but on the interlocutors to force this issue. Again, you leave us almost speechless. Your courage, your strength gives us strength. And so I just want to say thank you. You have our commitment. To Alana and Daniel, I'm from Chicago. Chicago has made it our community has made it our personal commitment to help Nero's rebuild. Daniel, I took great comfort in you talking about rebuilding Nero's. And now I speak not as a member of Congress, but as a representative from Chicago and the Chicago Jewish community. We are going to do everything we can to be by your side as long as it takes to make sure Nero's and the beauty of Nero's and every community is restored and Israel's strength and the strength of Jewish people is established. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it for all the help and support from the Federation of Chicago, emphasizing we still have 25 hostages, only from Kibbutz Nir Oz, including saying here that Ilana saw the Cunio brothers, 2 brothers from 4, and Sagid Ekelchen that I told you about. So thank you for the Chicago Federation. Most of the things what we need to do now is share everyone together, gather and help, releasing the hostages, and after that we will eradicate Hamas in all necessaries, as Nir Oz suffered. As you know, most on October 7, we lost 117 for 400 inhabitants. On that day, 41 were murdered, some bodies were kidnapped as well, and still 25 hostages. So we know what is pain, we know we want the revenge, and we want Hamas to be eradicated. The first thing we do now, do everything that the phase 1 will continue, and we will continue immediately to phase 2. And if we can squeeze everything together to one day on 42nd day, let's do all the pressure we need to do that to bring everyone home, and then the victory to the Western values. And after that, we'll eradicate Hamas, we'll eradicate terror, and we will fight the diplomatic jihad. We have so much to fight for, and we can have some painful concessions to bring now the hostages home. That's the first priority. Then we deal with everything else, and that will be also the future for Israel. And thank you very much. As the US, ended the World War II in 1945, and we have a country in Israel after that. Now, again, we have the US government and President Trump to help the Jewish people again from the scene that we saw on Saturday, and immediately squeeze it into a deal, because we know that if fighting will come back and war come back, it will take months, and that we cannot accept. Thank you very much again for all the support and for the Chicago Federation. Thank you, Republican Schneider.
Representative Self.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for the world. What does never again mean to the world? You just mentioned 1945. Yes, Israel came into existence there in Tel Aviv. I've been in the Independence Hall. It's a moving place, your own Independence Hall. But what does never again mean to the world? And frankly, Hamas right now will be handled, I think. I'm a soldier. I'm a simple soldier. This is not war. What we saw on October the 7th is not war. Frankly, we need pressure on, and I'll specifically mention two, Qatar, however you want to say it, needs to be pressured by the entire international community, because Hamas is not the problem right now. The problem is Hamas doesn't feel enough threat, doesn't feel enough pressure, because the only thing they understand is force. So we need to be, as the U.S. Congress, as the Trump administration, bringing more force against Hamas so that they release the hostages. And I'll also call out the UN, not only UNRWA, but UNIFIL in Lebanon. They all failed. They all failed. And when you look at the number of resolutions against Israel compared to the number of UN resolutions against the entire world, the rest of the entire world, you get an indication of they also need to feel the force of the civilized world. So I appreciate your stories. I cannot imagine. Sam Johnson held this seat that I hold today. He was in the Hanoi Hilton for almost 7 years. His body came back absolutely broken. You couldn't shake hands. You couldn't squeeze his hand. So this is not war, though. This is terrorism, and Hamas is holding out because they do not feel enough pressure. So I agree with you that the first mission in this is to get the hostages back, and that requires more force. I know you have a lot of hope in the agreement. I think we ought to be optimistic, but I think we ought to be realistic as well, because the first mission is to apply pressure, whether it be the agreement, if it holds. If it's not, force on Hamas to get the hostages back. With that, I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Self.
Mr. Latimer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Ranking Member. I had the opportunity 6 weeks after October 7th of being in Israel, at Kibbutz Kfar Aza, and what I saw was unlike anything I've seen in my life. And as I sit here and listen to your story, I don't think of it in geopolitical terms. I think of it as a father of a grown daughter, and I think of it the way you think of it, as your child. Were she under other circumstances at that concert? And were it her picture that was on this? When I look at these young men, I think of my nephews, and I think of the fact that you have an uncle as I am the uncle of other nephews. It's a personal thing. So many times we talk about these things in public office as a political, geopolitical thing, and some issues fall into that category, but this one to me is just a human thing. And I appreciate you coming and sharing this so that we can get a better personal connection and understanding. So when we talk about what we have to do, it's not abstract. It's remembering your faces, remember the way you spoke, the pain that you've suffered. And I thank you for sharing that publicly.
Thank you, Representative. I just have a couple of follow-on questions. Alana, I wonder if I can ask you a few specifics about them bringing you into the public. Did they bring you into the public more than once?
Yes, all the time I was taken to a different place. I also take a walk inside the hospital to get out. They take me to another houses, so I also was in the street. I was supposed all the time to all the people.
When you were out and exposed to people, did you get the sense that everybody knew who you were, what you were? Did they make that obvious to everybody, or do you get the sense that they did not?
There are people that they know, that they come to the door from the house to see the hostage, to see me. in the street, I all the time go with my eyes down, praying that no one know that I'm a hostage, so they don't kill me or do something.
And when you were in the public or in the hospital, or anytime that there was others around you that were not directly your captors, the whole of the area was your captor, but not immediately around you, was there ever anybody?
No, in the hospital you go through all the people with Hamasnikim before and after you, so no one can get you. And we get in area, so they close you in a room. And you are alone with people in the room waiting, someone bring you food, water, take you to the bathroom. If no one is there, you need to do your needs in the basket, in the trash, in front of everyone.
Thank you all for taking the time to share with us today.
Representative Mast,
yes, please.
I know that we heard from the recently returned hostages, the female soldiers, that they were being held part of the time in humanitarian area, and that people knew, and there was no one that offered any help or any consolation or any empathy or sympathy.
And that's the same thing that I've heard as well. That's why I was very curious to know if your experience was the same.
Right.
Because it does speak about broader motivations, the reaction of all that know exactly who and what you are, and what their commitment is or is not, and where their allegiances lie.
I can only say that I don't know, in their hearts, the people of Gaza, but for sure anyone there that is even against Hamas is being held captive too.
Thank you, Orna. Representative Meeks, did you have anything you'd like to close with?
I'll just close with thank you. I think it's important that everyone hears your voices and your story. And I also think that it's important, as all of you've indicated, that individuals speak up. Because this kind of human tragedy, every human being should speak up. Shouldn't be just individuals who may be from Israel. Shouldn't be just individuals who may be Jewish. Shouldn't be individuals who just may be Americans. Shouldn't be just individuals who may come from a different ethnic group. Should be everyone. And it should be a situation where we may not agree on everything all the time, but to hear your stories and to know of the reality of October the 7th, and to know that if good people do not speak up, it could happen to anybody, anywhere. It is with a deep, deep set of gratitude that I say to you that you have the courage to continue to come before us and tell your story. I'm saddened that you have to do it. And I'm saddened that someone is still held hostage or have lost their lives. But I will always speak up. Thank you for being here.
I will echo that comment. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate. We want you just to remember that they are changed, starved, and eating crumbs off the floor. Do whatever it takes. Bring them home now. Please do.
Thank you.
Thank you.